Hello, my name is Arvin. Today I am going to present about business communication between cultures. Intercultural communication can be better defined as an interactive phenomenon rather than one involving comparisons between cultures. These cultures are non-homogeneous social groups that are forever evolving. Their interactions should not just be seen in terms of a set of relations between the cultures, but also as a dynamic process whereby the cultures are defined both through their own characteristics as well as through their interaction with each other. This definition therefore takes both a systemic perspective and a dynamic one. The schematic representation of the model in the introduction emphasizes the actors involved in the communication, namely the addresser and the addressee. When they communicate, they unconsciously make use of a frame of reference which, in general terms, consists of, first, their knowledge of the subject under discussion. Second, their experience in professional or individual terms. Third, their norms, in example the norms of the society in which they live and values. Lastly, their assumptions, in example what is believed to be true and prejudices with regard to each other. Communication theories. According to a model proposed by researchers known as the Palo Alto Group, human communication does not emphasize the addresser and the addressee. Communication does, of course, require a message, form and content, but more important than the message in the exchange between protagonists is the interaction, the relation between the persons communicating and the context of the communication. Without going more deeply into the theories on communication between cultures, it can be concluded that not only do the interpretations made by individuals when communicating play an important role, but also the role played by the cultural context. The role of the context in communication. Context can be defined as the environment in which the communication process takes place and which helps to define the communication in example high context. Cultures and low context cultures. Culture is also context. Every culture has its own worldview, its own way of thinking of activity, time and human nature, its own way of perceiving self and its own system of social organization. The difference between high context and low context was the degree of importance attached to the context of any message. In low context cultures, the information of any message is contained in the message itself, in the words used, and the message is explicit. In high context cultures, most of the information is contained in the context where the message is being sent, in the relationships between the people involved and the situation where people are communicating. The term proxemics was coined by Hall, 1966, to describe the study of how people perceive their social and personal space. Different cultural frameworks define the information received by our physical senses not only in terms of what can be perceived, but also in terms of what can be eliminated. Proxemics also relates to the places where people move and the places where personal space. Personal space is characterized by an invisible zone with distinct boundaries. When an intruder enters this zone, people may feel uncomfortable. The main factors influencing personal space are gender, age, personality, the degree of sympathy towards the individuals concerned, the situation in which the individuals are confronted, and also the cultures involved. Channels of business communication. Communication also refers to the meaningful exchange process by which verbal and nonverbal information is shared through messages, and it can take many forms. The choice of communication mode can be influenced by cultural factors. Mead, 1990, gives an example with regard to telephoning. A U.S. businessman would consider it quite normal to make a cold call to phone a stranger with whom he thinks he could do business. A Japanese businessman, on the other hand, would consider this to be intrusive or aggressive. A business from an individualist culture, for example, may be intent on what it considers efficient communication when dealing with the business in a collectivist culture. The oral mode is used to set the conditions for cooperation, whereafter the written mode can be considered as a means of communication provided. The relationships established are scrupulously maintained. Computer, or mobile-mediated communication, CMC. Electronic mail is being increasingly used as a way of sending documents, requests and information generally to colleagues and potential clients. Cultural issues can lead to misunderstanding and even antagonism. Use of email, just as other forms of computer-mediated communication, CMC, blurs the distinction between the oral and written messages for many of its users. A sender or recipient may expect an email to be the equivalent of a letter or memo, meeting the formal requirements of language accuracy in text cohesion of a written text. The style will reflect more the spoken word with its slips of the tongue, false starts, hesitations and inaccuracies. Any resulting misunderstanding or incomprehension can be communicated and dealt with in later messages. CMC can help to alleviate discrepancies because both sender and receiver have, in theory, time to reflect upon and discuss their process as they are communicating language during business encounters. Two business representatives are able to communicate even though their native languages are different. Both sides could insist on using their native language when communicating, necessitating the use of an intermediary to translate. The presence of an intermediary or interpreter can hamper the establishment of a relationship between the parties. The focus of interaction may well become the interpreter who, in a way, is controlling the whole exchange without bearing the responsibility for the outcome. Differences in pronunciation can also add confusion. Deprived of proper cohesion, clear context and any oral explanation, the adapted text may have lost a good deal of the intended meaning of the origin. Problems frequently occur during exchanges of emails when messages sent in simplified telescopic form can result in misunderstandings or incomprehension. Face-to-face management relations. Whatever the language chosen, encounters occur in situations and contexts where the expectations of the interlocutors may be very different, where the pressure of differing social norms can disturb the communicative relationship. The first encounter. The way different cultures pursue the formality mode indicated earlier reflects tendencies within the cultures concerned. In another, Western, setting, however, first name terms may be the norm and insistence on using a title and surname may prove a barrier to establishing trust and confidence in that setting. Conversational styles. If a business relationship develops, some kind of negotiated communication mode may be established, whereby the context involved plays a decisive role. Once the relationship between managers from different cultures has been established, the maintenance of such a relationship can be fraught with difficulty, particularly when different styles of conversation are used. Taking turns to speak, rather than interrupting each other, may certainly ease the process of understanding, as will asking questions to check on understanding. The use of a shared second language will probably necessitate a check on the intended meaning of words or phrases used, and possibly rephrasing of statements to clarify understanding. Facial expressions during interaction. Facial expressions have been analyzed more frequently in terms of the emotions expressed than in terms of their effect on human relations. However, such expressions give important signals in social and business interaction. A persistent look can make the interlocutor feel like escaping or responding with signals of aggression. Such looks are often associated with feelings according to the context will express attitudes that are diametrically opposed. Facial expressions are also connected to the status of the interlocutors in social and business encounters. They play an important role when expressing the degrees of dominance between people with different cultural differences can play a significant role in the way facial expressions function. The act of smiling might be assumed to have a similar function across the world as a significant of happiness. Interactions through interpreters. English may be the working language during many international encounters, but many executives still rely on interpreters to explore and develop business opportunities abroad. An interpreter is essentially an outsider who is most probably not familiar with the company for whom he or she is working, nor with its culture, nor with its expertise in the area under discussion. The interpreter may end up becoming the focus of any interaction between parties, rather than establishing eye contact and developing a rapport with each other. They may well tend to concentrate on the interpreter who is speaking directly to them. The interpreter manages to translate expertly. The actual communication may still be unsuccessful because signals in a translated utterance may not be picked up by the receiver since he or she is unaware of the cultural context of the loading which the words contain. Conclusion. Even if language remains the dominant factor in communication situations, there are other elements that come into play, including the context, proxemics and facial expressions. Even if they share a common language, interlocutors may still experience problems because of their cultural backgrounds. Developments in computer or mobile-mediated communication in particular are changing the way people communicate. The numerous examples given in this chapter allow a better understanding of the new framework of intercultural business communication. Thanks for watching.